You trace any family tree back far enough, you're bound to find some unexpected branches. But I recently stumbled on one connection that it just stopped me in my tracks. A surprisingly Irish twig on the family tree of Adolf Hitler. Seriously, believe it or not, there's a Dublin link. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Yeah, it's definitely not a connection you'd immediately think of, is it? When you think Hitler, Ireland doesn't exactly leap to mind. But the sources we're looking at, the Irish connection to Hitler as family from War History Online, and the Wikipedia page for William Stewart Houston, they really lay out this intriguing family tie, right? And our mission for you today, listener, is to really dive deep into this little-known corner of Hitler's family history. We'll uncover the stories of the people involved, see the surprising turns their lives took, and hopefully offer a kind of fresh perspective on an era we think we know so well. There are some real, curveballs in this family saga. So let's start right at the beginning, an unlikely meeting. Okay, so the story kicks off in 1909 Dublin Horse Show. That's where Bridget Dowling, a young Dublin woman, first met Alois Hitler Jr., Adolf's older half-brother. Exactly. And what's quite striking right from the start is the image Alois presented. He apparently made himself out to be this, wealthy hotelier, maybe traveling Europe for fun, very sophisticated. So putting on a bit of a show. Seems like it, creating this impression of success that, it clearly caught Bridget's attention. So he wasn't exactly, advertising his actual day job then. Not quite. And Bridget was impressed enough that, something sparked between them. But the truth, it tends to come out, doesn't it? Alo wasn't this wealthy businessman at all. He was actually working as a waiter. Yeah, at the Shelburne Hotel right there in Dublin. Wow, quite the gap between the image and the reality, definitely. Unsurprisingly, Bridget's family wasn't exactly thrilled when they found out. No. The sources suggest they strongly disapproved. Did either source give a sense of why she was still drawn to him despite the deception, the family disapproval? That's a really good question. The sources don't explicitly spell out her deepest motivations, but we can probably guess a bit. That initial charm, the air of sophistication, that likely stuck with her. Right. First impressions. Exactly. And maybe Alois just had a very persuasive personality, enough to override her family's worries, at least for her. Sometimes, the pull of something different, maybe exciting, can be stronger than practical concerns. True. Despite those concerns, Bridget and Alois took a leap. In 1910, they actually eloped to London, got married there on June 3rd, ran off together, and then they set up home in Liverpool, 102 Upper Stanhope Street in Toxteth, right? Liverpool. That becomes important later, too. They even tried running a restaurant there, apparently. Yeah, they gave it a shot. The sources mention an eatery they opened, but it sounds like that didn't go so well. No, it seems it was unsuccessful. And the failure reportedly led to Alois having some kind of breakdown. A breakdown? Wow. It sounds like Bridget's life with him was already proving pretty unpredictable. It certainly seems that way. Did the sources give any more detail on the breakdown? Like what that entailed? Not really specifics on the breakdown itself. No. But the fact it's linked to the failed business suggests, maybe difficulty coping with stress, financial pressure, perhaps a bit of a fragile temperament. Paints a picture, doesn't it? Instability. Yeah, definitely. Which would have, massively impacted Bridget. And then in 1911, their son was born, William Patrick Hitler. Ah, yes, William Patrick. And this is the individual who ends up in this truly unique and, as we all see, incredibly complicated spot, being the nephew of, one of the 20th century's most infamous figures. Absolutely. His life takes some extraordinary turns. The instability in the marriage continued. It seems by 1914, Bridget and Alois had separated. That's right, and the sources point to Alois' violent behavior as a key reason. That's mentioned as a primary cause for the split. So he then decides to go back to Germany alone to try and start another business, leaving Bridget and young William behind. Yeah, leaving her to raise William basically on her own, though apparently with support from her family back in Ireland, which must have helped. That separation is definitely a major turning point. It completely changed William's upbringing. How so? Well, think about it. If they stayed together, or if she'd gone with him to Germany, his childhood would have been totally different, much more immersed in his father's German family, right? Closer to that side of the family tree. Exactly. Bridget raising him in England with her family's help. It also shows, her resilience really dealing with a difficult situation. Definitely. So, years go by. William's growing up in England, and eventually Alois gets back in touch. Starts asking for William to come visit him in Germany. Yeah, contact is re-established. Bridget eventually agrees, and William makes several trips over. And here's where the story takes another, really dramatic turn. During one visit, William goes to a Nuremberg rally, right? Huge event. And he sees his uncle, Adolf Hitler. By this point, obviously a major, powerful political figure in action. Can you imagine seeing your own uncle commanding this huge, intense crowd on that kind of stage? It's hard to fathom. Must have been, captivating, but also deeply unsettling. Especially given where things were heading. Absolutely surreal. And initially, Hitler did apparently show some familial interest. He helped William get a job, didn't he? Yeah, at an Opel car factory, I think it was. That's right. You'd think, okay, powerful uncle, maybe this could be good for William. You might think so. But the relationship soured pretty significantly. Oh, so what happened? Well, William apparently became increasingly disillusioned. And a key moment seems to have been the whole tragic situation with Hitler and his other niece, Geli Raubal. Ah yes, the and her death. Very controversial, mysterious circumstances surrounding that. Exactly. And the War History Online piece says this event triggered, and this is a quote, an eternal repulsion in William for his uncle Adolf. Eternal repulsion. Wow, that's incredibly strong language. It really is. Do the sources give any more sort of insight into his personal feelings about that? How it really shaped his view of Hitler? They don't really detail like private conversations or diary entries about Geli Raubal. No. But that phrase, eternal repulsion, it speaks volumes, doesn't it? Absolutely. It suggests this deep moral, emotional rejection of his uncle. Probably came from seeing something, beyond the public face, something deeply wrong. Yeah, that personal family tragedy seems like it was the final straw. Maybe the catalyst for him completely turning against Hitler. It seems very likely. So William goes back to his mother in England, but the story doesn't end there, of course. Not at all. It's 1939 now. Europe is teetering on the back of war. Bridget and William make a huge decision. They go on a lecture tour of the United States. A lecture tour, presumably about their connection to Hitler. It was becoming a massive story. Right. Okay. And given the rising infamy of Adolf Hitler, they decided not to go back. They chose to settle down in the U.S. Long Island, New York. Makes sense, trying to get away. And crucially, they adopted a new surname, Stuart Houston. Stuart Houston. A very deliberate move. Absolutely. To put distance between themselves and that name. Yeah. It really underlines their desire to just cut ties, start fresh without the constant shadow and frankly the prejudice they'd face. A new life in America. A chance to just blend in, maybe live normally. Adopting the new name was a clear signal. We are not those Hitlers. And it was around this time, or perhaps a bit later, that Bridget wrote her manuscript, My Brother-in-Law, Adolf. Ah, the manuscript, yes. Now this part needs a bit of careful handling, doesn't it? Because it contains some claims that are, disputed. She claimed, for instance, that Adolf Hitler actually lived with them in Liverpool for about 6 months, late 1912 to early 1913, supposedly hiding out to dodge the Austrian draft. Right? And she also claimed she introduced him to astrology and even influenced how he trimmed his mustache. Those are the claims. Okay, so what's the historical verdict on these stories? Well, that's the crucial point. While Bridget's manuscript is, a fascinating personal account, yeah, historical evidence pretty strongly contradicts that claim about Adolf living in Liverpool then. Oh, it does. Where was he? Records consistently place him in Vienna during that exact period, trying to make it as an artist, living in hostels. I see. So the Liverpool story, it's generally considered to lack any verifiable proof. It might be, misremembering, wishful thinking, maybe even trying to make her own story seem more central to his. Right? The unreliability of memory, especially decades later. Exactly. It's a good reminder that personal accounts, even interesting ones, need to be checked against other evidence. Definitely. But what is absolutely, unequivocally true and quite remarkable is what William Patrick Stewart Houston did next. Go on. Remember, this is Adolf Hitler's nephew. In 1941, with America entering the war, he wanted to fight for America against his uncle. Wow. He actually tried to enlist. He did. It took some doing, reportedly even writing to President Roosevelt, but he eventually got clearance. He joined the U.S. Navy in 1944, joined the Navy. Hitler's nephew fighting for the Allies, served until 1947 as a pharmacist mate, later called a hospital corpsman. The sheer irony is just staggering. It's an incredible statement, isn't it? A testament to individual conscience over family ties. Choosing loyalty to his adopted country over, well, the leader of Nazi Germany. Absolutely. And the Wikipedia entry mentions that amazing anecdote at his induction. Oh yeah. The officer asks his name. He says Hitler. The officer does a double take, then apparently says something like, "Glad to meet you, Hitler. My name's Hess." No way. Hess. Like Rudolf Hess, apparently. So you couldn't make it up. Feels like something out of fiction. Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. And it's also reported he was wounded in action, received the Purple Heart, wounded fighting against the Axis, his own uncle's regime. It just highlights the incredibly personal cost of that war, even for people on the periphery of the main players. It really does. A profound personal journey. So after the war, William, now William Stewart Houston, he gets married to Phyllis Jean-Jacques in 1947. And understandably, they tried to live as well, quietly and discreetly as possible. You can imagine they'd want anonymity after everything. They settled in Patchogue, New York, out on Long Island, and William used his Navy medical training. How so? He started a business analyzing blood samples for local hospitals, called it Brookhaven Laboratories. Ah, Brookhaven Labs. But you need to be careful there, right? Important clarification. This was his private business, totally unrelated to the famous Brookhaven National Laboratory nearby. Good point. Just happened to share part of the name. They went on to have 4 sons. Alexander Adolf. Adolf as a middle name. Interesting choice? Yeah, Alexander Adolf, then Louis, Howard Ronald, and Brian William. 4 sons. And here's another layer to this already complex family story. Okay. None of William's sons ever had children. None of them. No. Which has led to, speculation. There was a book, The Last of the Hitlers, that suggested maybe the brothers made a pact, a conscious decision not to have kids, to let that particular line end. A pact? Really? What's the truth behind that? Well, Alexander, the eldest son, has actually spoken about this publicly. He denies any formal pact. Okay? He said his brother Howard Ronald was engaged before he tragically died, and another brother had a relationship end, partly because of all the media attention and, the baggage that came with the family history. So maybe not a deliberate pact, but the weight of that name, that history, still had a massive impact on their lives and relationships. Exactly. It sounds like the notoriety just made having a normal family life incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, for them. That makes sense. A heavy burden to carry. Sadly, as you mentioned, Howard Ronald, who worked as a special agent for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Actually an IRS agent. Wow, yeah. He died tragically in a car accident in 1989, apparently on his way to serve a subpoena in a money laundering case. Oh, that's terrible. A real loss. He's buried in Coram, New York. And both Bridget, his grandmother, who died back in 1969, and William, his father, who passed away in 1987, they're also buried right there, St. Francis Catholic Cemetery in Coram, Long Island. So that American chapter, while always overshadowed by the past, found a sort of final quiet resting place there. It seems that way, and with William's surviving sons remaining childless, it does look increasingly likely that this very specific Irish-American connection to Adolf Hitler, it will just fade away naturally, end with this generation. Quite an extraordinary saga, isn't it? From Dublin to Liverpool to Nazi Germany to fighting against Nazi Germany to quiet anonymity on Long Island. Truly remarkable. And it's interesting too how the story itself, including Bridget's memoirs, contested parts and all, first really came to public light in the early 70s. Yeah, Michael published articles about them then, and her account was eventually published as a book, The Memoirs of Bridget Hitler, and later updated, giving her perspective, even if, parts need that historical pinch of salt. It really highlights our enduring fascination, doesn't it? With anyone connected, even distantly, to these huge historical figures. Her memoirs, flawed as they might be in places, still offer this very personal, intimate glimpse into the orbit of that family, even if it's a potentially biased glimpse, right? So just to recap then, we've tracked this really surprising Irish connection to Adolf Hitler. Starting with that chance meeting in Dublin, we've seen the complex and often difficult lives of Alois Jr., Bridget, and especially their son William. William's journey was central. His powerful rejection of his infamous uncle, his service against him in the war, and then the very quiet lives his own sons have sought in America. And the likely end of this particular family line. Yeah, it seems this unusual branch on the family tree is, well, drawing to a close, which brings us, I suppose, to a final thought for our listeners. Maybe reflect on how family history, especially when it crashes into huge historical events like this, can shape lives in ways you just cannot predict, across generations, across continents. What does this really unusual, improbable story tell us about, the long reach of history and just the sheer complexity of family ties? Something to definitely think about. That unexpected ripple effect through time. Step into the past and uncover the heart of Ireland. At Endless Grit History, we bring you hundreds of captivating documentaries exploring Irish history, myths, legends, and folklore. Our playlists guide you through Ireland's fascinating journey from prehistoric Ireland, proto-historic, and Celtic eras, and the early Christian and Viking periods to the Anglo-Irish invasion and the lordship of Ireland. Delve deeper into the Tudor conquest and religious conflicts, the union with Great Britain and the Great Famine, the fight for independence and the divisions of the 20th century, and Ireland's evolution into the 21st century. Best of all, we keep all our documentaries at 15 minutes or less, making it easy to explore Ireland as history even on a busy day. Every time you watch, you're supporting the upkeep of our channel. And when you share Endless Grit History, you're helping to promote Irish history and culture worldwide. We kindly ask you to like and share and subscribe to Endless Grit History now. Let's keep Ireland's stories alive together.